stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
Welcome to the 2023 DPSCD State of the Schools. Welcome. You are in one of our flagship examination schools, Renaissance. So we thank Principal Strada and her entire team, the Phoenix, those who subscribe to the Phoenix. I know there are some alum in the building, but we'll acknowledge you in a few moments. My name is Angelique Peterson Mayberry, and I am honored to have the ability to serve as the chair of the DPSCD Board of Education. And I serve along with 6 other amazing women, and I'd like for them to stand when their names are called. We have our secretary to the board, Dr. Iris Taylor. We have board trustee, Bishop Carletta Vaughn. And we have board trustee, Miss Latrice McClendon. And board treasurer is walking in, Miss Sonia Mays. There are a couple of board members who have not yet made their way. We have board trustee member Sherry Gay Dagnogo. And unfortunately, due to a scheduling conflict and obligation that could not be changed, we have our board vice president, Ms. Misha Stallworth-West. Thank you, board members. As everyone settles in, I'd like to identify just who's in the room today. So can I first ask if all elected officials would please stand? Any elected officials who have made it into the room yet besides our board? Okay, they're in traffic on their way. So we will move on. I also know that there are some students and some families in the room today. Can we have all of our DPSCD students and families please stand? Thank you so much. We also have DPSCD staff. They've worked all day, but in DPSCD, we work day and night. So if you are a staffer of DPSCD, please stand. If you work for the district, please stand. Yes. Look around the room. Excellence in the room. And then I also like to ask if you just support DPSCD, you love its students, you love its staff, and you love this district. Can you please stand? That should be everybody in the building. Everybody in the building. Yes. Thank you so much. You may be seated. I just wanted to make sure we had the right people in the room, and from looking around, it looks like that we do. Many of you know that DPSCD has undergone major transformation. DPSCD was returned to a local control for the school board in the November 2016 election. Many of us on the board have served since that time, and others have come along, and whether we serve the entire time or not, what we take close to our heart and pride is that what unites us is that we are steadfast in our decisions collectively. And that matters when you're talking about making decisions in the best interest of students, staff, and families. During the past 7 years, DPSCD has gone through this transformation, and although we're not yet at the finish line, we're not where we started. The education reform is accelerating, and we are in gear. As an elected body, this board has 3 major functions. One is to ensure that we have a balanced budget, which we have consistently done for the last 5 years. 2, that's good stuff. 2 is that we set school policy. And 3 is that we hire and evaluate the superintendent. And we work really hard to make sure that we're doing all 3 simultaneously. One belief we have is that if proper resources are provided, the possibilities for our students are limitless. Their ability to learn in a system that is structured properly is what is needed for high-level education. Collectively, we share a vision of high expectations and student achievement. And we couple that with quality instruction. We define our goals with our vision and our mission, and we do this through our policy. The superintendent and his team are excited to serve as we govern this district with the board. We lead as a united team with the superintendent and the board, each from our respective roles. We collaborate strongly. Sometimes we challenge each other's thoughts, but we always, with mutual trust for the monitored data, we make sure that even if it's not favorable, we know that this helps to drive transformation and change. Our work is done through the Strategic Blueprint 2023. And in that blueprint, there's a clear mission and vision to ensure that all of our students have the knowledge, the skill, and the confidence needed to thrive in our city, our state, and yes, even our nation. Our blueprint work is funneled through 5 major priorities, and those are aligned in our vision. The first one is outstanding achievement. The second one, whole child commitment. The third one, exceptional talent. 4th, transformational culture. And 5th and finally, responsible stewardship. You will hear, witness, and learn your part of these priorities that will be woven throughout this program this evening. Now, sit back and relax. Let's watch a video so you can see how we continue to rise in DPSCD.
Being around people that are just like you, that are into things just like you, it gives you like a sense of encouragement because you got your peers, your teachers, everyone around you encouraging you to be better at what you're doing. It's like a family. It's like you feel like you're with like your cousins or siblings. They're telling you can do this, you can be great.
Pre-pandemic, academically, we were on the rise. We were on a trajectory of growth. But the pandemic hit, and it was very hard on us academically and with our enrollment. We saw enrollment declining, we saw academics declining. But throughout the pandemic, our students showed resilience. Post-pandemic, we thought it was very important to put a lot of enrichment programs back into our school. The cheer team, the basketball team, the music department, drumline, foreign language. Our kids needed something to be excited about coming to school. And the teachers said, hey, we'll do the work.
We do a lot of common plannings. We do those weekly, and so master teachers usually facilitate the common planning periods, but teachers are working with each other. We have monthly study groups that are facilitated by the master teachers as well. And we usually get 15 to 20 teachers after school working on best practices, protocols, and just learning from one another. No one person has a role that's more important than the next. So we need everybody to do their part.
I would say that the staff and the leadership is very accessible. So if you do have a problem, it is easy to go to them and get answers and get a resolution for whatever your problem is. And I think that when teachers feel supported, when parents feel supported by the leadership in school, that it makes for a great environment.
I choose DPSCD over any other school because it's a great fit for my family. I actually had a teacher that understood my circumstance where I had to be at work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and she noticed that I would be sitting outside and waiting on the school to open, and one day she came out and voluntarily said, you can always leave your children with me. She understands that I'm a working parent and I need to get to school, and she has no problem with opening up the school door and the classroom door just to make sure that I can make it to work and provide for my family. I'm proud to say that my children are products of DPSCD.
We try to educate the whole child. It's not about all academics. Like I said, it's also about the mental health of students. It's also about helping families overcome barriers and challenges that they may have. So we have different partnerships with Henry Ford. We have DHS worker in the building. So we try to provide our families with whatever resources they need so they can be successful as well.
When they said it takes a village to raise a family, that is true. But the village also includes the school, the parents, the church, the corner store, the beauty salon. It takes all of that to bring it all together. Without all those components, we cannot reach the whole child.
My name is Christopher Nunnery. I am a autism spectrum disorder teacher. I'm also a unified sports for Special Olympics coach. The unified part is our ESE department, which stands for Exceptional Students Education. They're unified with our general education students. We have really good wraparound services. And wraparound services meaning that many hands make light work. So with our ASD department, it's not just our ASD teachers, it's also our social workers, our occupational therapists, our speech therapists. So we do a lot of community-based instruction because we know that with a lot of our students, college is not the end goal. A job may be the end goal. Working in the community may be an end goal. Volunteering may be the end goal. So we definitely work on not just the academics, but the social behaviors to make sure that they can interact with our community, interact in the community.
I was at a different district and I saw the great things that was going on here at Detroit, and I wanted to be part of it. My principal was Akia Murphy, and she was a dynamic principal. She really taught me almost everything that I know. She was very, very helpful. So if you have a desire to become an attendance agent, if you want to become a principal or assistant principal or curriculum director, whatever you want to do, if you let your leader know there is a pathway, DPSCD is constantly working to recruit excellent talent. And so that means a lot to our district, our families, and the people that we serve. They know that it is consistency within the district. So for example, when a teacher rises up through the ranks, they know for a fact that we are investing in every aspect of our team.
So we've been very fortunate to be in partnership with the Detroit Public Schools Community District. Our focus at the Kresge Foundation is to advance economic equity, climate resilience, and overall quality of life in the city of Detroit.
We believe that we have a collective responsibility in making sure that Detroit's neighborhoods are places where families want to raise their kids, where children can thrive in those neighborhoods.
We as educators must commit and make the investment now within our students. And in my world in operation, what that looks like improved classrooms. That looks like better lighting for our teachers. That looks like improved technology so that our students have an opportunity to connect not only with the students within their school, but students and beyond. This is transformational for those communities because it builds a pathway to 21st century learning within the city of Detroit and for our students who so desperately need it. So when they're beyond Detroit, when they're beyond the state of Michigan, and they're really making an impact in our nation and in our world, we can bring it back to DPSCD.
I want you to know that you're worth it, that you can do anything you put your mind to, that there are people all around the city who love you, who want to go to bat for you, who want to advocate for you. I myself am senior class president, and the reason why I went up for that position was so that I could make it a space and environment for people like you. And so we love you, you are loved. And it's just important that you know that you matter and you're worth it and you're so special.
And still.
And still.
And still.
We rise.
And still.
And still, we rise.
And still, we rise.
So for all of those who weren't in the video, now's your video moment. So on the count of 3, we will say, and still, we rise. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And still we rise. Yes, let's go. So stakeholders, thank you for being here this evening, because you see that the village includes you. So whether you work in a school or not, there is a school in your neighborhood. You've adopted schools, many of you. Schools are in church, our students are in churches. They're working in co-op opportunities. And so you are in the right place. This is indeed the right time. And the time is now for us to rise. Now, let me introduce someone. So this person is the person who stays up late, who gets up early, who calls or emails you at 2, 3 in the morning. Staff knows, because when you wake up, don't you see an email from Dr. Vitti? Pretty much. The board does, so I know. But he's committed to the transformative work that's required to put us back in a space back and beyond where we were as a district before. If you're an alum of DPS, raise your hand if you're an alum of DPS. Look around the room. This is excellence. And this means that people are committed to giving back because you're here. So thank you so much for doing that. So the next voice that you will hear will be that from our fierce leader, our superintendent, Dr. Nikolai Vitti.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you. Thank you for being here tonight. I know that you have lots to do, and just that you're here to get an update on the district and hopefully share this with the greater community. Your own space is helpful to us as we continue to rebuild this school district and return it to the glory that it once was, and the importance that it still exists for our students. I want to, before I get into the presentation, I want to thank our board. I know that they were introduced earlier. It is a privilege to work with our school board. It's a great collection of individuals with various backgrounds, from faith-based background, the business community, the nonprofit community, parents, for all alumni. It is, I can tell you, having worked in many urban school districts in the country, having studied urban school districts in the country, I think the hardest work happens between the board and the superintendent. I've said this countless times, the relationship between the board and the superintendent, if it is going to work, it has to be a marriage. You have to think about it as a marriage. And just like any good marriage, there are times when you're going to disagree. And how do you manage those disagreements? How do you stay focused and professional and assume goodwill, even when there is understanding and disagreement? And I think all of you in this room would say, if you've been paying attention, that the board and I have worked professionally together to get things done. As our board chair said, we do not always disagree, we do not always agree. But when we do disagree, we try to problem solve through where is everyone coming from, how do we compromise and not sacrifice children in that compromise, and remain focused on what is most important, which is student achievement. And there isn't a day over the last 7 years that I don't feel privileged, honored, and blessed to be superintendent of DPSCD, and that's because the board gave me the opportunity to lead this district and continue to lead this district. And after 7 years, or going into my 7th year, there's not a day I regret taking this job, and there's not a day that I wish I had another job. And I can still say that after 7 years of very hard work. And as a lot of administrators in this room know, and even parents in this know, that work in DPSCD is twice as hard as anywhere else. Add COVID to it, it's 3 times harder. So 7 years sometimes feels like 14 years. Add COVID, it's like 20 years. But I'm still here, and I'm privileged and honored to still be here. It's a blessing. The work in DPSCD for me, and I know many of you in the audience, defines the challenge of equal opportunity. It defines the challenge of true racial justice. It defines the opportunity to use traditional public education as a vehicle for social change, social transformation, empowerment. It's why I get up every day to do what I do. It's why, despite the challenge, I push through, like all of you, to do right by children. These are some of the headlines that dominated papers and the news under emergency management before our board was empowered and elected, and before I was privileged to be appointed as the first superintendent after emergency management. And these headlines are daunting. These headlines are intimidating. But in no way do these headlines ever define our children. It never really even defined our employees. It defined a travesty of a governance process called emergency management. And so our work as a superintendent board team was to rebuild the district in the way that it would function and then it would operate before emergency management, but also think to the future and be transformative to modernize the school district so that it can actually lead to change for children. And we did that by starting with a plan. You can talk a whole lot, but what are you going to do to make things better and different? And any vision or mission needs a plan. What is it you're going to do? What's your vision and your mission? We engaged stakeholders now almost 7 years ago, and we said, what's working, what's not, what do we do differently, what do we do better? We talked to everyone, and this culminated into the strategic plan that's guided our work for the last 7 years. The vision is very clear. This is what we want children to be able to do at the end of graduation. Our mission is to find what we do every day. We educate and empower every student in every community every day to build a stronger Detroit. That's our day-to-day work. Our vision is what we aspire to do at the end of the work. And as our board chair indicated, we have 5 priorities that drive our budget, it drives our metrics, and it drives our work on a day-to-day basis. There's so much that has happened over the last 6 years that I could spend probably my entire time with you reading off this slide and naming all the accomplishments that we've experienced in each of the 5 priorities. I'm not going to read each bullet, but I do want you to take a minute and just look at the slide on 2 priorities, and I'll show the other 3 priorities in a minute. So just take a minute and read that. Hopefully, if you're far away, you can still see it. But just to name a few, when we talk about transformative culture, reestablishing PTAs and school advisory councils at every school so that parents could be empowered to work with the principal and the leadership team to create a school improvement plan and problem solve with the principal, creating a parent academy so we can build the capacity of our parents so they can better advocate for their children, whether it's advocating academically, whether it's supporting behavior and problem solving, and or it's financial literacy and English language classes. It's an anti-racist and sanctuary district resolutions that the board passed. Changing the code of conduct to focus on progressive discipline, but also now empowering principals to decide when a suspension is the right course of action. It's building a student hub so information can be shared with students and students can read the updates by themselves. Outstanding achievement this past year, despite the pandemic, despite online learning, despite COVID, close contacting, when the results came out last year, we outperformed the entire state of Michigan on average in math, in literacy, on the PSAT, on the SAT. We outperformed city charter schools, apples to apples. Our improvement was greater than the city, than the county, than the state. We've shown our highest literacy rates since MSTEP and our highest literacy rates in the past decade. It doesn't mean that we don't have more work to do, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. Despite the pandemic, we improved graduation rates. Obviously, we're creating a new newcomer program at Western for our newly arrived immigrants and want to expand that program so they're better supported, or adding academic interventionists, which are college-degreed individuals that work with students in small groups and one-on-one so we can catch them up, build their literacy foundation so they can read at grade level based on the state standards. I'll give you a chance to look at these slides and all the accomplishments. Tonight is about reminding us where we've come from a little bit, the improvement that we've shown and seen, and talk about what are our current challenges and how we're going to tackle them this upcoming year and the future. But I don't want to jump into where we are and what we're doing because it is important to celebrate the successes that we've had as a district. I think one fault that I have, and I have many, is that I'm always trying to push ahead. Where are we now and where are we going? And I don't always take a minute to look back at the accomplishments we've made. And tonight is about also trying to do that because we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we've done great work behind us. And these slides demonstrate that. So whole child commitment, putting guidance counselors in all schools, funding guidance counselors at the national average, exceeding the state average in guidance counselor allocation, putting mental health support in every school, even after COVID relief funding this year, establishing student leadership councils at all schools, putting 2 students reps on the school board is a major accomplishment. Our cultural passport program, where we ensure every student goes to the DIA, they go to the main library branch, they see the performing arts come alive. Reestablishing Evening of the Arts at the Fox Theater is another example of a commitment to Old Child. Or let's just talk about art and music in every school. Art or music in every school, and recess in every school. Exceptional talent. On average, we've increased teacher salaries by $20,000 over the last 6-7 years. Our beginning teachers, when we started this work, were at $38,000 a year. Now they're above $51,000 a year. Our most veteran teachers were at $68,000 when we started this work. Now they're at $90,000. And so they're not where they should be because this work is always harder than other school districts. And if we're going to continue to retain and recruit the best teachers, we need to pay them accordingly. So every year we chip away at it. We've made dramatic improvement, but we're still not there, and we'll talk more about that. It's developing our own talent within our own district through our On the Rise Academy. We often talk about going outside for talent. The talent is here in the city. It's in the district with our own people. So we are now taking academic interventionists, paraeducators, who have college degrees and working with them to get their certification. They're working hand in hand with our master teachers, our lead teachers. And so over the last 2 years, we've developed over 100 teachers of our own and our own talent. 80% of those individuals are DPS, DPSCD graduates, and 80% are teachers of color. So we are actually developing more teachers of color in DPSCD, for DPSCD, than the University of Michigan, than Michigan State, than Wayne State, and those are facts. We're going to continue to do that work. All of this work, I've been fortunate to be named Urban Superintendent of the Year. Our teacher was named Michigan Teacher of the Year. One of our social workers was named Social Worker of the Year. And that all comes with doing work differently and better. And all that work is because everything that you're doing to support our students and doing things better and differently. With success comes recognition. And so that's a little bit of what tonight's about, but those awards will only continue to grow as we continue to do better work. And obviously being responsible stewards. We once were controlled by the Finance Review Commission. They had to approve our budget. They had to approve all our union contracts. They approve all contracts over $750,000. None of that exists now. Since we've reworked our budget, aligned it to our strategic plan, we've now had 3 years with 0 audit exceptions, no financial penalties. We use COVID money. We were recognized as one of the most responsible strategic districts in using COVID money. We developed a new budget this year without COVID money. And so excited to be able to not talk about money. We need more money, and we'll talk about that, but we are responsible with the money that we have. So as we look to the future, you know, this conversation isn't only just talking about the good things that are happening. It's also being honest with where are the challenges and what are we going to do about those challenges. So 3 areas that I'm going to highlight tonight are around attendance, student achievement, and facilities. And so we all know that if students aren't in school, they're not learning. And our data, this isn't a national study, this isn't looking at other urban school districts. In DPSCD, if a student misses 9 or fewer days, they're 3 times more likely to be at and above grade level in literacy and math on state assessments. If they miss 9 or fewer days in high school, they're 5 times more likely to be college ready on the PSAT or the SAT. So what does this tell us? 1, it tells us we have a attendance issue that we have to improve as a district. It also tells us, secondly, and this is the optimistic part, is that when our students are in school consistently, our teachers are doing the right thing to make sure that they're learning. And the data shows that. Now, this data would be alarming if it didn't matter if you were chronically absent or missed a lot of days, because then we wouldn't be doing the right thing when they are in our classrooms. But we are doing the right things, and we need to continue to do that. What we all know is the greatest obstacle in improving attendance is the concentrated poverty that we see in the city. And the numbers are clear. You can just pick a statistic, and as a city, we're on top in a negative way. And I just want to highlight some of these examples. Look at violent crime. Look at the population change in the last 40 years, 20% drop in population. You can look at asthma. You look at vacancy rates of buildings. Now, this defines the challenge. As I've said 100 times, and I'll say it 100 times if I need to, in Detroit, we don't have a talent gap, we have an opportunity gap. And so these statistics are not excuses. These statistics are reality. This is what our children are facing on a day-to-day basis when they come to our schools. It doesn't mean that they can't learn. It doesn't mean they can't be at grade level. It doesn't mean that they're not going to go on to college. It just means that the work with our students, on average, is harder than the work in Birmingham or in Southfield. And so we're going to talk tonight about equitable funding, but we're also going to talk about the work here is harder. And it drains you. You all feel it. That's why you're sitting here saying, wow, it's late. I'm tired. And every day I hear, I'm tired, I'm burnt out, Dr. Vitti, because you're all working extremely hard, and you're working harder than the average educator. You're working harder than the average parent, because I'm working harder than the average superintendent, because we're all trying to do what we can to overcome these statistics. Again, not excuse, reality. So despite that challenge, we are still chipping away and improving. Just this past year, this isn't, you can play with numbers and say, 30% improvement. This is percentage point improvement. Last year, 22 versus 23, almost a 6 percentage point improvement in average daily attendance. In fact, our average daily attendance last year was the highest it's ever been, even before the pandemic. So we are working extremely hard to make sure that children are coming to school every day. And the numbers show that across the district. We dropped chronic absenteeism by nearly 7 percentage points from last year, and we've done this with using many strategies. 1, having better data, knowing what kids are at risk to be chronically absent, knowing what students are absent by taking better attendance, engaging families early, engaging individual students through our counselors, our attendance agents, our deans, our APs, our teachers. We've also done a better job of just working across teams. Rather, the academic team works better with the attendance team, and schools are working better as a leadership team to problem solve. Our home visits, our parent academy, building and working with our parents, making sure that our parent liaisons were funded even without COVID money, so they can build a bridge to the community and parents. Now offering a stocked home family resource center where we offer toiletries, help with evictions, and we're expanding that through our health hubs. And then lastly, our pilot program for small vehicle transportation, rather than relying on school buses, now vans, so that we can pick up students a little easier, get deeper in the neighborhood, and pick students up at the doorstep. So even with the district-wide improvement that we saw outstanding improvement at some individual schools. And one I want to highlight tonight is at Pulaski. Pulaski, as you all know, is in one of the toughest neighborhoods, if you will, facing that concentrated poverty in the city on the east side. And just in 1 year, from the baseline year after the pandemic to last year, a 36.5 percentage point, not percent, percentage point improvement in reducing chronic absenteeism, and a 10 percentage point in average daily attendance. So I hope Principal Smith-Bell's in the audience. I think we have maybe some of her team or parents, but I want to congratulate you on your team on this exceptional improvement. And so, although I showed statistics about, violence and vacant homes, it can still be done. It can still be done when you have a dedicated team of people that work together in a unified way. And what I love about Principal Smith-Bell is she was so hungry to improve her attendance. If anything happened, if I had to have a half day of school because of something, she would email me almost every day. Dr. Vitti, can you exempt me from that day? Because we had a half day, and kids don't always come on half days. Like, no, we can't do that. But that's how focused she was on moving her performance. And beyond Pulaski, there are multiple people in this room that have urged students to come to school when they're tired. They have urged families to do their best to get the kids to school. There are people here that have carpooled. There are people here that have turned into moms and dads and uncles and aunties, even despite what's happening at home. There are people here that did home visits in the cold. One of the statistics is the average temperature in Detroit, which I never really knew. I grew up here, but when you see that number at 49 degrees, and you think about living in Miami once upon a time, it's real about the challenges of coming to school every day. But there are people in the audience that even in the snow, in negative 10-degree weather, still visited homes to get the kids to school. So again, students rise, we all rise. Everyone here, I want to thank you for doing your part in getting kids to school every day. So how do we continue to improve attendance? We have to continue to improve the home and school partnership. We cannot improve attendance if our parents don't feel safe, if our parents don't feel trusted, if we don't build real relationships where it's a give and a take. It's not us only tell you what to do. We understand what the issues and challenges are. That's why those parent liaisons were so important. And we have to start dealing with some of the core consequences of poverty, which is what our health hubs are about to do across the city. So with private dollars, we're initiating 5 to 7 health hubs. This will be at every part of the city, from the east side, west side, central, southwest Detroit, where either high school or K-8 will bring back, which was once part of DPS, which are really community schools. So each of these health hubs will have a family navigator referred by a teacher, a guidance counselor, a parent for a family or a student to receive mental health services, to receive dental services, medical services, vision services, but also serve as a family resource center. So toiletries, help with evictions, help with electricity bills. All of that, legal services in general, will be offered throughout the city through these health hubs. And then lastly, you know, all of our schools now talk about it, is continuing to try to have students feel loved, challenged, and prepared. If you all stop and think about what does it mean to be loved, challenged, prepared, I talk about all this time. Almost everyone in this room at some point, whether it was a parent, a grandparent, a great teacher, a coach, someone pushed you, but loved you and prepared you at the same time. That's probably why you're in this audience at some level. And that's what we have to do with our children every day, even if they yell at us, even if they curse at us, even if they don't want to be there, even if they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with. We have to be the adult. We have to take a step back and say, okay, how do I figure out this relationship so that child can feel loved, challenged, and prepared? And that's why we do our surveys. This is why we're problem solving through this, because we know that at least our middle school and high school kids are more likely to come to school when they feel loved, challenged, and prepared. Our babies, they don't decide if they go to school or not. We got to work with our parents and through the resource issues that get in the way of that. Student achievement is the most important thing that a school district does, is we have to make sure that more of our students are performing at grade level and at college ready so they can go on to college, go on to world of work, and be competitive. So, you know, the research is very clear. We can talk a lot about students being below grade level. We can talk about concentration of poverty, but there are levers that definitely raise student achievement. No matter what level a child is at, if we do certain things and do it well, we will raise student achievement. This district has already demonstrated that. One, you have to have curriculum that's at grade level. We did an audit 6 years ago and saw that our curriculum was 2 to 3 grade levels below under emergency management. Now all of our curriculum is at grade level. You get 7 months on average of improvement academically if you have grade level content, which we now have pre-K to 12 in all of our subject areas. If you have a strong instruction, so an effective teacher using the curriculum, effective strategies or questioning and writing, 6 months improvement based on that factor. If a student feels engaged, about a month of academic progress, and then probably most importantly is the expectation of the teacher. If the teacher feels like the student can do it and shows that how they speak, how they interact, how they prepare, how they grade, how they engage parents, then you can get 8 months of growth based on that factor. But it's also what are kids doing? What are the materials that they have? And we've done a lot of work of moving away from bulky anthologies that maybe some of us used and moving to real literature, real novels that kids read, that they write about, and that they talk about it. These are just some of the examples, and literature that represents our students and communities. And regardless of the grade level that you're at, this happens at schools all the time. So these are just some of the examples at different grade levels of what our students are reading and talking about every day. Everything from Esperanza Rising to Hidden Figures, A Long Walk to Water, or One Last Word about the Harlem Renaissance. This represents our students, the history of our students. And moving math to being relevant. You know, it's not just memorizing formulas, it's real math. So you still learn the formulas, but it's embedded in real content. And so this is just one example of algebra actually coming alive and being relevant and real to students that we're doing from pre-K all the way to the high school level. And as I said, you can't talk about student achievement if you're not investing in teachers. You know, when we started this work, 400 vacancies. I vividly remember preparing for this job, and one of the questions the school board asked me is, how are you going to fill vacancies? It was one of the questions I had to answer, one of many. I felt like I was rewriting my dissertation with all the questions that I had to write and respond to. And this was one of them. And then as I started as superintendent, as any good leader does, you start to ask questions. Where are we? What are we doing? What are we not doing? And it was amazing to hear from HR who told me, Dr. Vitti, we can't recruit teachers here. That's what I was told maybe the first week of the job. We can't recruit teachers. We deal with long-term subs. And I said, that can't be the case. We cannot stay there. And so right before the pandemic, we were down to about 40 teacher vacancies. During the pandemic, we had a surplus of 100 teachers beyond the actual allocation and fully staffed with ESC special education teachers. Now we have new challenges. And one of those challenges, mid-career teachers. We have to do now, we got to revamp our pay schedule, and we have to now look at that mid-career teacher, retain that teacher and recruit that teacher, or we're going to go back to high vacancies. You already see that trend happening. And you know, we've been working with DFT now for several years, and we'll continue to work with DFT. We have to continue to differentiate our professional development and continue to work with our leadership team so that they grow as coaches and supporting our teachers and the profession. But very quickly, again, the numbers don't lie. The highest level of literacy improvement since MSTEP in over a decade. Am I celebrating that number? No, I'm recognizing the number as improvement, as progress, at the highest level we've ever been. But I don't go to bed feeling satisfied with that number. I go to bed knowing we're improving and we got to continue to tweak and refine and accelerate. But I'm proud of the improvement that we've had. PSAT, when we look at 8th grade math, you can see here 24% higher than we were last year, almost highest ever. SAT literacy, highest ever at 33%. Again, are we there? No, but improvement, and the highest improvement and achievement that we've had in math. We still have work to do since the pandemic, but definitely improved. Higher improvement than the state, higher improvement than the county, higher improvement than charters. In math, again, improvement versus last year, but still not where we were before the pandemic. And in math, much better in SAT, but not the highest ever, but more improvement than the city, the charters, and the county. And so, yet again, we have a great example of one school, and we have many, that have improved student achievement. And I also want to highlight that this improvement is not isolated to certain schools. We talk a lot about our exam schools, our application schools. When we look at our literacy data, you can see that 75% of schools improved in at and above grade level performance the year after the baseline year. So this is systemic improvement in literacy, and then 54% exceeded their pre-pandemic levels in at and above grade level performance. So systemic change, and in math, the same thing, 81% improved in grade level performance, 44% since the pandemic. But one school really comes out, another neighborhood school, which is Bagley, Principal Frosch and his team. You can see the numbers, 10% to 24%, that's at and above grade level performance. That's just not growth. And then you see it in math as well, reading and math. And so one of our goals that we've set as a team of central office administrators and principals is that we got to get out of the single digits. And that's something we said going into next year, is that we, step by step, incrementally, we're going to improve, and we're trying to eradicate next year, this year, the single-digit performance and at and above grade level performance. And I'd also say what's great about Principal Smith-Bell and Principal Frosch is they were both APs, assistant principals, at the schools before becoming principals. And this is another example of succession management and leadership development that we are starting to build throughout the district. So it's not random of who's in the next principal, but being intentional about leadership development. We have another example at the high school level, Martin Luther King Senior High School. This was not picked because of our board chair, but it's about the data. And so you can see here an SAT performance and SAT math performance, solid improvement in college readiness. And so I want to recognize Principal Perry and his team for the work that's happened at King and that will continue to happen at King. And all of you in different ways. I know every single one of you in your own way have contributed to raising student achievement, whether you're a principal, you're an AP, you're a teacher, you're a parent. In some ways, tutoring, filling in, observing instruction, giving feedback, making changes at certain schools. All of you have contributed to raising student achievement, so thank you. So what else needs to be happening in this area? Continue to go deeper and differentiate professional development, move away from one-size-fits-all type of professional development and individualize it for individual teachers, continuing to expand our academic interventionists so we can go more one-on-one, small group in literacy and math to catch students up on the foundation skills that they lack. And then lastly, continuing to reimagine the high school experience. Our 11th and 12th graders have to be in AP classes, advanced placement, they have to be in dual enrollment classes, or they have to be in career tech, period. The 11th and 12th grade experience for most of our kids is completely irrelevant. They don't see the relevancy of what they're doing. There are some students at every school that know they're going to college and the high school experience makes sense to them. There's too many students that don't see that pathway. So the high school experience has to be a pathway to college or the world of work and definitely life in general. And we have to change our coursework, we have to change our schedule so that we make it intentional for students to be on that path rather than it be random. And that's something that we have great plans on that we're going to talk more about by the end of this year, announcing developing our schedules, having better pathways to, for example, Wayne County Community College, where students can take college classes and career tech classes in their junior and senior year to make that experience more relevant. Facilities. I would say the most shocking thing that I saw when I started to interview this job was not only the inconsistency of instruction in classrooms and the use of materials, but the state of facilities throughout the district. The fact that under emergency management, that it was allowed for our buildings not to be invested in was frankly disgusted me, and I won't mince my words. For students to go to certain buildings every day with no plan, with no funding to solve those problems, for me, was one of the best examples of second-class citizenry. I said to myself, I named it off the top of my head when I was interviewed. I remember there were 10 cameras in front of me, and I said it. I think we were maybe at Northwestern, if I remember right. And I've always been thinking, how do we solve this problem? How do we solve this problem? So, we've talked about bonds, and that's difficult because Detroiters are already overtaxed. And fortunately, with COVID relief funding, we've been able to now make a major investment, $700 million in our facilities. It won't make them perfect, but they will definitely improve at scale over the next 5 to 6 years. And so right now, if you look at where our schools are, frankly, we didn't even know where our schools were. In 2018, the board and I initiated a review to know what was the extent of the building and the problem, and we did this study and showed that district-wide, if you look at the facility condition index, our buildings were considered deficient, and that's the legend there on the right if you're looking at the screen. So you take all the 100 so buildings on average, when you look at where they were when they were first built to where they are now or in 2018, on average, the state of the buildings were considered deficient based on this FCI ranking. And so this was the state of infrastructure and technology across the district. Red means unacceptable, green acceptable based on technology standards. So you can look at network closets, and you know what some of those look like with wires all over the place. Local area network, wireless LAN, wide area network, cabling, security cameras, classroom technology, just, touch screens, laptops, and telephone systems. When we started this work, there was, for every student, there were 6 computers, 1 computer for every 6 kids. Let me get that ratio right. Now we're 1 to 1, but it was 6 to 1 when we started this work several years ago. And so not with COVID money, not with money from the state, but every year with money that we didn't spend, which happens every year in most districts. You should be underspending, not overspending, because things don't come in as you budgeted. You have vacancies here and there. What we did is we took all that money, put it in capital projects, and initiated now 318 capital projects, like putting a playground in every K-8 in elementary school, which now that is the case. By the spring, every school will now have a playground that is upgraded and modern because of these investments, and you can see them across the board. But what is, in technology, look at the difference between red to green. We are now a modern district when it comes to technology infrastructure based on the investments that we've made over the years. COVID dollars helped us do this, but even our own use of resources has allowed us to do this. And when we started this work, there were 6 people that worked full-time in IT. 6 people in a 100-building district with 7,000 employees, 6 full-time people. And so we rebuilt our IT teams mainly with full-time employment, some contracting, and so our children now have a modern infrastructure when they go to school every day, and so do our employees. So $700 million of investment. We've put these in 6 series, from building new schools like Pershing and Cody, a new K-8 school in Southwest Detroit, to every school having modern HVAC and air conditioning in the next 5 to 7 years, with the exception of maybe only 12, which are older buildings. So these projects have now started, expanding pre-K as our #1 way to improve enrollment in the years to come. And after the investment, we'll go from being deficient as a district to being fair. So that means, like, when you look at all of our buildings, on average, they're considered deficient from an FCI. After the $700 million are spent and implemented, we go to fair. So our standing as an infrastructure with our buildings will go to fair and more modern, and we'll be utilizing our seats. We go from 71% of our seats being used to 81% being used. And so what we're doing now is engaging communities on the design of new buildings like Pershing and Cody, and this is just the beginning of what Pershing may look like as we build a new Pershing. And I think it's important to note, we're not, and we love our exam schools, we love our application schools, but we have to invest in our neighborhood high schools. Our neighborhood high schools are the anchors of communities, and so building a new Pershing and building a new Cody, we believe, keep people in the city. They keep people in the public school system, and there's a legacy that is continued from previous years. And so I want to just take my hat off to our facilities team, our IT team, that has done enormous work, going from a couple people to now a team of people implementing the reform and the work. So we're going to finish our anchor investments. We're doing our community engagement right now in new design, and starting to implement our master facility plan. So I want to end with an all call, with a concrete action step for all of us, which is equitable funding. When we go back to those statistics about the concentration of poverty, it goes back to my earlier comments. The average student in Detroit comes with different challenges. It's not an issue of talent. It's not an issue of will. It's an issue of just more issues, a bigger bag of challenges, a bigger burden on your shoulders when you go to school every day. And so that means you need different resources to attack those issues and problems. And the governor, to her credit, and this Democratic legislature has narrowed the gap between wealthy districts and DPSCD. They've also funded the literacy lawsuit, which is going to help us do a better job of doing more individualized instruction for students that are behind. But we're still not there. So we do a fairly decent job of holding Republicans accountable, but we also have to hold Democrats accountable. And the window right now in the state legislature, I think, may be a small window. They have a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature to get things done now, this session, in order to move to equitable funding. So These are facts, everyone. DPSCD receives $9,600 per student. That is what I would call the floor. Every district in Michigan, at the minimum, receives $9,600, and that has improved over the last several years. And under Proposition A, everyone receives a minimum amount, which was not the case before Proposition A. So now there's a minimum amount, but there is no ceiling. There's no cap of the ceiling. So to get $9,600 at the minimum, you have to tax at 18 mills. That taxes for businesses and homeowners that rent out their property. But if you generate more than $9,600, you keep that money. And that's what's happening in our district. And unfortunately for us, most of the districts that are generating more than $9,600 are our neighbors. So they're in Metro Detroit. So when you think about recruiting and retaining teachers, when you think about recruiting and retaining students, we are competing with we're competing with districts and cities that have more money than we do for their students, which doesn't make sense when we go back to knowing our students have greater challenges. So I think everyone in this auditorium believes that every student should be treated equally. And I think most people in this audience believe every student should be treated equitably, which means you give more to those that have less. And that's not what's happening in Michigan, period. There's no way around that. This is the facts. So if we receive the same amount with local funding as some of our neighbors, the dollar amount in yellow is the revenue in addition to what we receive that we would receive. So if we were at $10,942 per student, we would generate $64 million more every year based on the number of students that we have. So when some of you here or outside say, Dr. Vitti, why don't you and the board pay our most veteran teachers $100,000 a year? It's not like me and the board sit in a room and like, nah, we're not going to give them $100,000. They don't deserve it. It's a matter of money in, money out. You only can operate with certain dollars. Or when you say, Dr. Vitti, why isn't the air conditioning fixed? Or why don't we have air conditioning in our building? Or why does the boiler continue to break at Cody? Because you don't have general fund, and that's the other issue. These are all general fund dollars. They're completely fungible. You can use them for anything. Scoreboard, coach salaries, teacher salaries, curriculum, air conditioning, bus services, transportation, no restriction on the money that I'm showing here. DPS, on the other hand, 40%, 38%, but let's say 40% of our budget is restricted. That means when we get money from the state, this is state money and federal at the top. It's restricted. So we receive Title I money. We receive special education money. That money is restricted. So we get Title I money, can't be used for teacher salaries, can't be used for transportation, can't be used for facilities, can't be used for teacher salaries. So so you might hear, maybe in Capital Confidential or some other publication, that, well, DPS receives more per pupil funding than any school district in Michigan. Well, when you add the federal money, it is true, but it's restricted money. So I'm all for saying that we have the most money, but then free the money so we can use it like any other district. And so that's one way of solving the problem, which is free the restricted money, make it flexible so we can put it in teacher salaries, we can put in facilities. Other things are, fully fund high schools. This is why charter schools don't do high schools. It's too expensive. And so to run a high school, it's more costly, so fund high school students at a higher level. Fully fund special education. We've made great progress, but we're still not fully funded. And we all know that DPSCD on average serves more special education children. We're proud of that, but we should be funded to do that, not take children that other districts tend to push away because they're not funded for it. Reimburse districts fully for transportation. We all know the geographic span of the city. Much harder to transport students across the city. We're a choice district for the most part, We want our students to go to neighborhood school, but we want them to stay in the district. Those are extreme high costs that other school districts don't have. Actually fund school facilities. Not one penny in the state budget goes to fund facilities. So you are taking out of the general fund every time you do any kind of upgrades to facilities, which we know our students can't afford that. So, you know, I started with some headlines. These are new headlines. These are the headlines of an empowered, elected school board. This is the headlines of a school district that is moving in a new direction. And the work is not stopping. And there's so much more to do. So I want to thank you for being here this evening. I want to thank you in your own space, whether you're a principal, AP, you're a parent, you're a community member, you're a business partner. At some point, you are putting your shoulders to the wheel of making sure that we deliver on our promise that if a child comes to our school district, we empower them and we give them the tools, the skills, the knowledge, the confidence to be competitive in this global economy that our kids have to deal with. I said it 100 times, I'll say it for 101 time, which is when you give our kids the resources, they will outcompete any kid in this country. Our kids are naturally smarter than the average kid in this country. I know that because I see it. What they deal with, what they see, gives them a perseverance and a natural intelligence that when you give them the other stuff, the book smart, the background knowledge, the vocabulary, then they outcompete the average kid in this country. Because our kids see and experience things that the average kid doesn't. So the school system, at the end of the day, is the place where those students, where our students can get that background knowledge, that confidence, the skills, the book knowledge, the ability to stand up in front and articulate a vision and an argument. Our kids can naturally do it. They just need sometimes that motivation, that background, that inspiration. All of you are doing that. So let's continue to deliver on the promise of traditional public education, which is to be the vehicle for social change, equality, and racial justice. So many have gone through this system and are where they are because of the school system. We have to continue that legacy and create the next generation of leaders to carry on what is great about this district and this city. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Detroit. Thank you to the Mumford Band. Thank you for Renaissance High School for allowing us to use your space. Thank you for all the principals. Thank you to our board for being here. Everyone have a good night, and please be safe.